Boy, what a nice crowd. This is pretty neat. And I actually got applause for an introduction. I don't even get that in Washington. Go to Washington and I just barely get by, you know. But it is real nice to be here. And it's nice to be at home. It's nice to be in Texas. And basically all of August I've been here. And it's very encouraging. You know, in Washington, if you think that the world is what we see and hear and do in Washington, you know, you have really a distorted viewpoint about what America's all about. So it's when I come home and get to visit and get to speak out and get to visit with people like you that I realize that there are some very deep concerns about what's happening in this country, and that you're on the right track, and that you want to do what's right, and you're not coming to the government and looking for handouts and special interests. So that to me is very encouraging, and there is but one special interest that we should be working for, and that would solve just about all of our problems, and that is our liberty. So often in Washington, that is the issue that is most neglected. The issue in Washington is that of how do you get things, and how do you influence the government, and how you wield power. And really and basically, we only have two groups in Washington to deal with that we have problems with. And if we can handle those two groups, we have it made. And the way I see it, it's made up of conservatives and liberals. Other than that, everybody's great, you know. And there's only two parties that seem to have a problem in really understanding what's going on. You know, it's those Republicans and those Democrats. But you know, there is a healthy sea change occurring.
Yes.
I would say that we're starting to see a reflection of this. I always argue that the government that we have is a reflection of the people. And you say, boy, that's bad news. Look at what kind of government we have. What can we say about the people? Well, it's a slow effort. That is, the people may change before Washington changes. And Washington's not doing badly, considering the fact that on average they're about 20 years behind the times. They're about 20 years behind the people, and but we're seeing some catch-up. And I think just 2 weeks ago we saw some catch-up, dealing with the very subject we're going to be spending some time on today, and that is the subject of the Patriot Act. And this was the amendment that came up to the House floor, amendment that I was a co-sponsor of, and that was to tone down the Patriot Act, to get rid of totally and completely the sneak and peek provision in the Patriot Act. And we weren't sure whether we could get it to the floor because I was a co-sponsor of another amendment with Bernie Sanders, who wanted to get rid of that portion of the bill that said that the FBI has the authority to go in and just start snooping at libraries and bookstores and just looking at all the lists in case they might find some information that would be worthwhile in their great effort to provide security for us. And that was ruled out of order, and we fought and fumed with it, and it looked like that would not be brought up. So when this subject of sneak and peek came up, the lead on that was Butch Otter from Idaho, and he had voted against. He was one of the very few Republicans that voted against the Patriot Act. There were 3 of us that voted against it. He had voted against it, so he's been very consistent on this issue. And I was the co-sponsor of that, and we got it to the floor, and we got a vote on it. But the amazing thing, not only did we win it, but we had over 300 members of Congress vote to weaken the Patriot Act and get rid of that provision. Now, it would be misleading if we were led to believe that all of a sudden Congress is waking up, that they finally read the Constitution and they voted on principle. But they did wake up to the tune of hearing some voices, your voices. And that's the part that I am so amazed about. Not so much that there were some of us out there, but you know, doing this, the job that I have in my own way for 20 years or more, you know, it comes around where you think, well, there aren't very many of us. So, and we don't have a great deal of influence in Washington, so therefore you say, yes, our numbers are growing, yes, I'm on radios and we get responses, yes, we have the internet, and but is the message really reaching? And I think this vote is a reflection of the fact that several things are happening. One, there are more of us than ever before, and the other fact is that we have better means of communication. You know, we have the internet and radio and shortwave and newsletters and just so many more things available to us than 25 years ago when I first went to Washington. You had 3 major networks and that was it. So this is good news. That doesn't mean to reassure you that we're over the hump. This is just the bare beginning, because the odds of that staying in the bill and the Senate passing it and the President signing it, very slim. And even if they did, do you think we could depend on them to follow the rules? There's no way. I mean, there's one portion of the Patriot Act that Ashcroft argued for, and he still argues for. He says, we have to do this. And he said, and somebody said, well, why do we have to have this radical change? He says, it's not so radical. He says, we've been doing that all along. We just want to put it into the law. So that's generally the way it works. So I want to talk, of course, specifically about the Patriot Act, but more about the attitudes in Washington and how it works and what we're up against. First, it's a political attitude. The determination of individuals to go to Washington and do what they say. Have you ever had a member or a candidate come to you explaining their position and they sounded pretty good and then went to Washington and forgot what they told you? Has that ever happened? That was probably one of my early motivations to run for office, was the fact that too often we've been deceived. We can never agree on every issue. We can't have unanimity on everything. But we should have agreement on sticking to our promises and doing our very best to obey our oath of office, and that is to obey the Constitution. But the politics of it is very important, because depending on what their position is, not only do we see people change after they go into office. Have you ever seen some in office when they had the opportunity to do some good? When they left, they became outstanding spokesmen for our policy, but didn't do anything for us when they were in office. And sometimes people are congressmen and they'll say one thing and represent a district. Then they want to become a senator, and all of a sudden their views change. And then you have somebody that wants a senator, he wants to run for president, and his views change again. So they're all over the place. Now I'm going to read a quote here from an individual. Some of you may have seen this. It was in one of my publications. And this is a quote from an individual when he was a senator. Sounds pretty good. Sounds like I don't think many people here will have too much objection with this. He said the Clinton administration would like the federal government to have the capability to read any international domestic computer communications. The FBI wants access to decode, digest, and discuss financial transactions, personal emails, and proprietary information sent abroad, all in the name of national security. The administration's interest in all email is a wholly unhealthy precedent, especially given this administration, Clinton's administration's track record on FBI files and IRS snooping. Every medium by which people communicate can be subject to exploitation by those with illegal intentions. Nevertheless, this is no reason to hand Big Brother the keys to unlock our email diaries, open our ATM records, and read our medical records or translate our international communications. The implications here are far-reaching, with impact that touch individual users, companies, libraries, universities, teachers, and students. Does anybody disagree with that statement? That's a fair warning. That comes from none other than John Ashcroft. But now he's in charge. He has the power, and all of a sudden his attitude is different. He will know how to handle the power and authority much better than the Clinton administration. But maybe Wallace was right. Maybe there's not a dime's worth of difference. It's too bad we can't make him eat these words. That's what he needs to do. He is out on the campaign trail to drum up support for the Patriot Act, but he's also quite ready to pass Patriot Act number 2, which if you thought Patriot Act number 1 was bad, 2 is even worse. And under that one, they're going to be able to decide whether you're an American citizen or not. Yeah. And then if you're not an American citizen, you might be in Guantanamo before you know it. So this is serious business. But the impressive thing to me is that no average American, we have not been reading of dozens and dozens of cases where the knock on the door in the middle of the night and we've heard of people being hauled away and never seen before. It's not like that. And yet the American people, individuals like you in this room and many other tens of thousands of people have come to realize that if we're not careful, it could come to that.
Bottom line, what we have developing is a corrupt government that is controlled by private financial interests that are driving forward, using crises to enslave every man, woman, and child in America, and once we are totally enslaved, to use us as the cannon fodder for what Brzezinski, Brzezinski, and Pienack and others have called imperial mobilization. They told us a 100-year war, it's never going to end. As the terrorist threat evolves, we'll have to take more and more liberties. These are all quotes. This is all admitted. Think about it. We've had a war on illiteracy. The test scores are dropping. We've had a war on drugs. There's triple the heroin, double the cocaine on our streets than what there was just 10 years ago. The prison population has more than quadrupled in the last 5 years. And there's more police, more checkpoints, more SWAT teams in ring wraith outfits kicking down doors, and more cops and citizens getting killed as a result. Again, problem, reaction, solution. Over and over again, government uses crises to scare the population into submission. That is so important to understand. And it doesn't matter if Bill Clinton is in office or George W. Bush. They're just figureheads, puppets, marionettes dancing on a string. And you follow those strings back to the dirty little corner, and there's a big fat spider sitting there. And yes, my friends, there really is an Illuminati. There really are 13 families. They own the big banks, print the money. And they have stated publicly that they plan to get all of us, that's 95 to 80% of us, out of the way to engineer a servant class and to totally take control of the evolutionary development of the human species. Now, that's heavy stuff. Sounds like a science fiction movie. Science fiction movie 30, 40 years ago. We're in 2003. And whether I'm reading some CNN news story or Silicon Weekly or Bill Joy in Wired, they're bragging about how the elite is going to be the only group, the real elite. I don't mean the guy down the road that owns $1 million house. I mean the real elite, the folks that own the banks that print the money. That's when you're wealthy. That's when you're powerful. That's when you're rich. That they are the only people that are going to have access to all of this undreamed technology that's been developed. So, we're not just fighting old-fashioned tyranny here of the Babylonians or the Romans or Hitler or Stalin or Mao. We're fighting a push by a scientifically crafted dictatorship that is sworn to dehumanize you and your family.
The country is getting poorer. There is no doubt in my mind. A lot of people are going to get poorer. They're going to get poorer because the country is poorer. And they have exhausted now the tools that they have used traditionally since we've had our Federal Reserve, especially in the last 30 or 40 years. The tools that they have used to get us out of recessions have always been fiscal stimulation. Government spend money. Run up the deficit, print more money. Well, this time around, they've been doing that, at excessive rates. Even early on, even before the recession hit, they were doing it. So what are they going to do? In the old days, if the recession was, if they wanted to end the recession, interest rates were brought up high to dampen the economy, and interest rates would be high. Well, now, at the bottom of the recession, interest rates are at 0 or 1%. Real interest rates are very, very low. So how can they lower them? How can we spend more money? The national debt is going up right now over $700 billion per year. And about 6 or 8 months ago, I thought I was making a very, very rash prediction and said, before too long, in the next several years, we're going to have the national debt, which includes the money you borrow from Social Security. The national debt is going to go up over $1 trillion in 1 year. And I think that's going to be true. But there's going to be a limit to this. Eventually what happens, it runs out of steam, the dollar loses its value, interest rates go up anyway, which they have started to do, inflation comes back, and you have inflation with recession and depression. And the government can't function. But the real threat then is, will the momentum that we have now, will it build? Will it pick up? Will we not have hundreds but thousands of people then recognizing what we have to do? And that is restore limited constitutional government correction. And I think what has happened to our country is that over the years, the prosperity, which was a consequence of our liberties, have become the dominant theme of everything that we do, whether it's local or national in politics. So it is the desire to get more and more wealth. And to get more and more wealth, you have to have more and more control of the government because the government controls so much of the wealth. So the concentration and the effort in Washington is 99% on preservation of wealth and what we're going to do, and very little concentration on the issues that we deal with, the preservation of liberty. If we concentrate and do our job and preserve liberty, we will never have to worry about our wealth. Okay, he asked if there's an international conspiracy to overthrow our government. The answer is yes, but probably not in exactly the terms that you're inferring, at least my understanding. I can't go and say, well, I know the 25 people who meet and have made these plans, and this is what's going to happen. I think there are 25,000 individuals that have views opposite of ours. And they're in our universities, and they're in our congresses. And they believe in one world government. And if you believe in one world government, then you're talking about undermining national sovereignty, and you're talking about setting up something that you could very well call dictatorship. And those plans are there, but they're not quite, I don't see them as quite as sinister as a plot. I think it's a philosophic fight. They believe in it. Some of the people I know believe in internationalism, the United Nations, and some of those people who voted against the war didn't vote against the war because of not having a declaration of war. They wanted more support from the United Nations. And that attitude is prevailing because it's been taught so long in our public school system, as well as our universities, and the people of great influence on our major news networks, and most of the positions in government support internationalism that would lead to that type of
Can you speak to the neocons of your speech you gave about the Trotskyite, Machiavelli, and you?
Yes. Now the neocon speech I think is available here, and it's 20 or 30 pages, so I can't go over the whole thing. But the whole purpose of it was to try to point out the philosophic background to those individuals who control our foreign policy. And a major part of it was a critique of a book written by Michael Ledeen, who's one of the leaders of neoconservatives, and he's at the American Enterprise Institute. And he believes in all this stuff, except he only believes in the United Nations if the United Nations does what he wants it to do. But he's almost a militant nationalist, and he had written a book on Machiavelli, and praised Machiavelli, and really believed you should use these tools, which are rather ruthless. So I took his quotes and answered many of his quotes, and I quoted him literally in order to try to keep it, from getting too emotional. And the interesting thing about this was he called me. He wrote emails, and he also called my office. He was outraged, by this. He wanted an apology and everything else. But he praised. He high praise of Machiavelli. But the most interesting thing is that book I had read it. I had read it about 2 or 3 years ago. I think it was 1999 when I read it when it came out, and it was handed out to us at a Republican strategy meeting. And I read that, and it really, I went back and looked at it and said, when I was starting to put all these pieces together about who really got control of foreign policy since 2001, and that he was this ringleader in it, then I went back and reread this book, and that's what generally that book was about.
Let me state this important facet of why we can't dig out of the mud, why we can't get out of this at this point right now. Because people are still in their Democrat and Republican camps. And you look at the people, who control the parties, and you look at their actions. Open borders, gun control, more regulation, more taxation, arming our enemies, building up China and North Korea. You look at the real actions of the Republicans and the Democrats, they are almost identical. Almost identical. And so you've got the left and the right. I've told the so-called left, the bleeding heart, useful idiot left, you guys should absolutely love George Bush. The government's exploding in size at every level. He's expanding the Department of Education. He's signing on to the UN and UNESCO to take control of our educational processes. He says he'll sign the new assault weapons ban that's coming up for reauthorization with a ban of all semi-automatic shotguns. Now that's in there, folks. You should love Bush. He's wonderful. But see, oh no, that's horrible. He's bad. He's one of those right-wing Christians. Folks, the guy goes to Skull and Bones. They put it on national TV. Oh, we caught this ritual on tape with them throat slitting and doing ritualistic murders of women. They claim it's an effigy, just like at Bohemian Grove. They put it on ABC News, and Peter Jennings says, hey, they're just having fun. Then as old men, they go do it at the Grove with Arnold Schwarzenegger and the rest of them. This is incredible. Look at Arnold Schwarzenegger. Democrats hate him. He's the great scourge. You should love him. Gun control, abortion on demand, wide open borders. He says he wants to raise taxes. Got Warren Buffett in there, the big kingmaker, George Shultz, all of them. See, there's no difference. And I've been on so-called conservative talk shows, and they'll go, let me tell you something, Buster. If George Bush has got to compromise and ban semi-automatic shotguns, so be it. You got to work to get things done. I think you're working for the communists, boy. I've had them. I think you're working for the communists, boy. It's the same thing. Congressman Ron Paul did an absolutely amazing thing. He gave a speech on July 10th entitled Neo-Con, where he said the Bush administration is run by Trotskyites. This is Ron Paul. Organized criminals, corporate raiders, and people that promote a system of, quote, entering into evil and a giant controlling welfare state. And this is where the left and right, that is, the establishment types that think they're on the cutting edge of the false political spectrum, this is where they fall down. The left thinks we got to be nice, we got to get these rich people's money and help all these poor people. That's the loving thing to do. And then the Republicans go, that's horrible, don't do that. Please don't throw me in the briar patch. That children's fable? The rabbit really wants to get thrown in the briar's patch. That's where he can run away and be safe. Oh no, don't give us big government. The last thing we want is giant mechanisms of control to extract your wealth and to dominate you. That's the last thing we want. Big corporations are the biggest recipient of not just government largesse and corporate welfare, this crony so-called capitalism. They are now being given governmental powers. And so the left screams, We got to put this fire out, these evil right-wingers, who aren't even right-wingers. You know, they're statists, they're command and controllers. There is no left or right. We got to put the fire out. Bring a truck of gasoline immediately and spray it directly on it. We got to get more air on this. And so as they clamor and jump up and down and, fan the flames, it empowers this juggernaut. The government is nothing but a mechanism. You've got the big central banks that took over last turn of the last century, started printing the money. They own the money machines that print the money. If a country doesn't accept their central banks, the enemy has been involved in terrorism. Giant attack fleets are landing to save them. The whole place is obliterated so the IMF and World Bank can come in and totally enslave the population, and vaccinations can start, and suddenly everybody's sterilized and all the kids have got autism, and we're here to help you. The soldiers are all dying for depleted uranium and sarin and DX in the vaccines. The New World Order, there's certain species of insects that are laid into other living insects, larger insects, and the babies hatch out and eat the inside of it out and then break it open and fly off, and you just see this dead beetle, this husk laying there. That's what America is. We've got all these eggs in us, they're growing real fast, we're at death point. The country's probably going to die, folks. We're at death point. They're eating us, the New World Order is going to bust out of that, using all our energy to set up the global empire, to smash and destroy and mini-nuke everyone. And in the UN, the EU can stand back and say, we are fighting against these evil right-wing Americans. When in reality, again, the creature that laid the eggs in us is sitting right over there in Europe. You understand this, folks? You understand this? And so it points at us. The system, the beast system, points at America and goes, look at that beetle. It's spinning all over the place and going crazy and fighting everyone. And then when they're done with us, the brood hatches out, total global domination, total enslavement of you and your family. And you'll have Bush is energizing the phony left wing. They're hatching out everywhere. They're going to totally take over. And don't think these leftists are going to care when you're getting dragged off to a camp, having your guns taken. They're going to be cheering, going, finally we defeated them. Finally the UN came to America and stopped this fascist takeover. It feels so good. Shut up. Shut up. We love the UN. And they'll use the UN up too. They said, fine, the UN isn't popular, we'll start some new global organization. Well, NATO's now global, and it's going to be in Israel and Afghanistan and Iraq and North Korea when we take that over. And oh, by the way, if you're not part of this glorious system, they'll just blow something else up again and say, we got to have a national draft of professionals too to work here domestically. It's going to be a draft where everyone serves. Yeah, domestically you can dig ditches or be an engineer or all the auxiliary time. It's compulsory volunteerism. You don't have to volunteer, but after the giant collapse of the banking system, it's the government that puts your 400 multi-pass creds onto the card each month. Fine, you don't want to volunteer. We're all working, and so we're going to cut you off your card if you don't join in to pay for what goes on your multi-pass. They've already announced it. They're going to have 4 grades of ratings. If you have bad credit, you've got a 2nd grade. You're not going to be able to fly unless you pay off the debts. Or at least sign up for a work program to pay them off. After all, we can't have these people who are 18 and have hundreds of credit cards mailed to them on purpose. No, you never pay them back. Once you make money, they don't send you credit cards anymore. We can't have all these lazy people ripping off the credit card companies. It was so hard for the central bankers to add zeros and ones on the computer screens. So I hope you're beginning to realize. At this point, folks, we got to fight them as much as we can. They've laid the eggs, again, all in our torso. And they're already breaking out. Right now, the beetle's kind of going, what's going on here? Because they're busting out right now. Now they're starting to feed. There could be an emergency surgery of some type if enough powerful people weren't totally sold out and decadent to remove them. The country's still badly damaged and would, I don't know if it could survive. But we can prepare for the crash landing. And we can work our tails off to inform and educate people so that as the globalists bring us more terror and more wars to get us behind supporting their system, more resistance will form, and then you will see the defeat of this current phase of evil. There's always going to be another phase of evil that the next generation is going to have to contend with. But this is really for all the marbles. If the globalists win now, If they get their agenda through now, they have stated that they are going to begin accelerated mass extermination programs. I mean, folks, there are Library of Congress published, declassified, 1993, 100-page reports with Henry Kissinger's name on it, where they made deals with the Third World. You want IMF and World Bank money? You got to force and sterilize half your women before we give you the money. I mean, they've already been doing stuff like that for years. Millions of men in India, police just drive by, grab you, put you in a truck, cut their testicles off. They don't even cut the tubes. We had over 400,000 women in this country grabbed by CPS and health departments, federally funded, up until the 1980s, and taken off to have their uteruses removed. A lot of times they would have, it gets worse, they would have medical students do it. I mean, this stuff's already been going on for a long time. You haven't felt the brunt of it in this country yet. You are. Because the system is hatching its young for the next phase. And out of that crisis, they're bringing us, they're again going to set us all up for imperial mobilization to work as slaves in the crown jewel of the New World Order empire. And America will be absorbed and its energies refocused to complete this circle of wickedness. But again, think about how far we've already slid. The American Bar Association comes out and says, lawyers are going to spy on you. By law, they're going to have to tell the judge and the prosecutor everything about you, but they don't have to tell you. And by the way, we're not going to let people represent themselves because they keep winning all their cases and having a better track record. And well, we're a private monopoly, again, out of London, England, and we're going to make you do that. Here's another one. Your cell phone is now a tracking device, and this particular story is out of the Green Bay newspaper. And the reason it's interesting is it says, in 2001 they passed a law that all new cell phones, well, the law was passed in 96, it activated October 1st, 2001, 5 years later, that all new cell phones have to be satellite trackable. That is, there's GPS in the cell towers, they triangulate your cell phone and follow you, even when it's off. And they said, well, the governor, Doyle, got together with Homeland Security, and we don't just need the feds to be able to monitor this. We need the local police to have a tracking system for everyone just to keep track. We punch your code in, Social Security in, and you got a cell phone. It pops up where you're at, even when your phone's off. I mean, imagine trying to tell this to somebody 10 years ago that, well, there's going to be a big, giant federal office that it's secret, and it's going to watch you as you drive around with your cell phone or in your car. And then they go on in these articles to say, by the way, the government also had a feature put in, it wasn't really mentioned back in 1996 when it was passed, that they need to be able to covertly turn your phone on and listen to you while you got it. But again, it's to stop terrorists. We passed it many years before the terrorists, but we said the terrorists were coming, and this would all be needed. Here's another one out of the BBC, spy plans for new cars. And I remember about 8 years ago, a listener sent me a truck driving magazine. It was how great it was. All the new cars, big rigs are going to have this. We're going to track you and tax you a little bit, but it gives you more service, and it's going to be a wonderful thing. And then I, about 4 years ago, had this Wisconsin state congressman on. Remember the legislature? He said, I'm on a federal board. I want to warn everybody. The CNN News article got him on. He said, I want to warn everybody. I've been to the federal board meetings. Within 5 years, they're going to be taxing all of us to drive our cars and regulate us. This is horrible. They're going to track us with them. And the guy sent me a full copy of the federal plan. I had it right there, and I was warning everybody they're going to do this. And people calling her on the street, go, Alex, you've gone too far. There's no way they'd get away with that in America. There's no way they'd be able to get away with that. I'm not going to put up with it. And then Oregon comes out and goes, we've been involved the last 5 years in a federal study, and we want to, by 2004, to make everybody be taxed to drive their cars. And just so happens, the Associated Press reported, that 5-6 years ago, all new cars had to have the plug-ins in the ignition for the satellite tracker box in them. So it's a $25 unit, and you just go in and pay for it when you get it by law to get your tags, and we just track in, tax you. And look, if you get a fuel-efficient car, it's not going to cost that much, just a few cents a mile peak times. You got an SUV, it's going to be 60 cents a mile. They said this. And so they're stopping us all up, another divide and conquer thing. Look at them with their big cars, some petty, low-level class envy stuff to sell that next wave to you. And I'm looking at it right here. Spy planes for new cars. And they say not only is it a satellite tracker system, and Canada's starting this, the U.S. starting this, Germany just made it the law. They're phasing in over the next 5 years to make it, all new drivers have to have it. And then in 4 years, everyone has to get it, 5 years. They're always really good at that. Again, they understand the mindset of a mammal. That, well, yeah, I did see a lion back over there about a mile away, but he's over there eating somebody else right now. It's being phased in. Of course, we don't have a chance to run. We're in a pen with these people. We still got some small projectile weapons, which they're kind of worried about. We'll have massive attrition with our stormtroopers as we attempt that move at this point. There could then be a backlash to it as the enemy has victories. No, we can brainwash them and let them keep their guns, and then a tiny fraction will resist. By then it'll be too late. And as Josh Sugarman said from the Violence Policy Center, we've already got you, kids. We will ban all guns. So it's very serious. And I predicted years ago, again, once you know these people, it's not hard to know their plan. That they would have Hollywood people and rich people take microchips. And so you see them all over the news, how wonderful microchips are and how we all need microchips. And, this Hollywood person's getting one for their child or daughter. And, look at the family, the chips. And they're so cool. Everybody's got to have it. The same newscast in the same order on every channel saying the same thing, word for word, off an admitted script. You're watching daytime TV dramas, or cop shows. Man, that kid wouldn't have gotten kidnapped if he just had the Applied Digital Solutions chip. Well, here's one out of the Herald Sun. You may have heard of this. Microchip to watch Prince Harry. Prince Harry to be fitted with a surveillance microchip during his year-long holiday in Australia. It's to be implanted under the skin for his safety. See? Wow. Man, that's a major status symbol. It's like the satellite tracking. Ooh, I have OnStar. It's a status symbol. You need to have them remove that if you buy a Chevy vehicle, because now it's standard on all the new ones. And that's the same federal package. Ford's announcing to make GPS standard. See, it's standard, and by the way, there's a tax, and by the way, we set this up 5-6 years ago. See the premeditated nature of it? See how they build the infrastructure and then put us into it? I remember 4 years ago being on the radio and going, here's the Army War College document. Here is the public plan. They're talking about hive minds, connecting us all in by law with microchips in our brains by 2025. The Army War College brags how they'll use the media and hype and peer pressure to get the people to accept what they would have never accepted without the brainwashing, the conditioning. And people go, man, you flipped out. I can't believe that. And I put a link on my website to the Army's website, .mil. And they go, I can't believe they're saying that. The Army's job is going to be implanting every citizen with their own chip. But they actually said that. And then everybody saw on the news the last 2 years after the terror attack, they suddenly played up child kidnappings that were actually way down, but they played them way up and said, what's the answer? And suddenly on every network at the same time, microchips, implantable microchips to track and trace you. This stuff sounds crazy, but you have all seen it on the news. You've all seen the unified propaganda, the systematic crafting, the same phrases, whole paragraphs on different networks, spoken exactly the same. And see, that goes into the nature of the staged events. They're calling it a Patriot Act debate nationwide. Ashcroft's hearing your concerns. They drive the guy in secretly to the hotel where he gives a speech. No one is allowed in. They frisk the media. Only allow certain members of the media to ask questions. This has all been admitted. It's like Bush up there for how great Made in America is, how much good American-made things we have, how good the economy is up in St. Louis earlier this year, with all the Made in America USA sprayed on the boxes, and they zoomed in. It's all made in China. None of it was made here, but it was just an illusion. Secret Service told them in Indianapolis, Indiana, a couple months ago, all right, everybody, President's about to be here. Take your ties off, or you can't be in here. Thousands of people. Some people said, well, I'm taking my tie off. Secret Service threw them out. That's your free country. You go ahead, President, speak. And, let's have everybody from the weapons plants come. It's already a controlled mass there. And so the crowd from the weapons plant comes in to watch the President. They're already all for weapons sales and everything. So, this is a good crowd. But then they're told, take your ties off. Because they want to have the view that, we're blue collar, we're not wearing ties. My point is, I could talk for hours about that. It's totally staged. It isn't liberal bias or conservative bias. See, they know that your minds are somewhat sophisticated. So they will create layers of, you peeled that layer back, you found out it was a liberal bias. You peeled that layer back, it was a neocon bias. You peeled that layer back, it was a big government bias. No, it's a, again, scientifically crafted warfare system. And even before they were coming out with all the microchips, telling us how good all the implanted microchips would be, they said, watch kooks that talk about implantable chips. And all these nuts that talk about urban warfare training and black helicopters. And all of a sudden, years before they launched all the helicopters on us and the raids and the training to get us ready to get rid of posse comitatus, the 1878 law that bans the military from engaging in law enforcement activities, they would say, crazy people talk about black helicopters. It's a code word for absolute evil. And then when the helicopters and the urban warfare training hit Texas and the rest of the country, and they were blowing up buildings in front of people and terrorizing the population, Czechoslovakian troops running around, they went, of course, we're just doing some training to get our military ready. And black helicopters exist. But still, people that warn the public about black helicopters, kind of this icon or symbol for urban warfare training, conditioning, they go, but you're still weird to talk about them. You're still weird to talk about implantable microchips. You're that weird guy who talks about all that weird stuff. I'm like, why isn't it weird when it's on the news? See? So that's built-in defense mechanisms where people don't want to face a threat. So they want to just deny what you're saying. They want to deny what you've told them. They don't want to believe it. Everything's been made so comfortable for us here, while they euthanize the human spirit. Here's one out of Television Week. We posted this on Infowars.com. Television Week. Big magazine. Industry magazine. It says, is your television watching you? Television Week. Could the federal government find out what you're watching on TV, even if you're not the subject of criminal investigation? The answer is yes, according to legal experts and industry officials. Under the USA Patriot Act, this stuff, they built this infrastructure. They had it all lined up. Go day. Building it, to launch the primer that was September 11th, to roll us into the next phase. I mean, this is diabolical. They're on a plan, and we have derailed it. Make no mistake, we would have already seen more huge catastrophic attacks. Not the little pinpricks, just to remind us of the terror. If you wouldn't have been out there involved, speaking out, writing books, putting up websites, doing radio interviews, calling into talk shows, telling people at church what's going on, making copies of videotapes. If you wouldn't have been doing that, believe me, they'd already be blowing stuff up. They'd be launching more anthrax attacks. They were the big CFR guy who kind of runs the terror operation for the government, makes little terror announcements, the Hart-Rudman Commission. Gary Hart, he got up on TV middle of last year, he said there will be smallpox attacks in Denver, Dallas, and Cleveland, and you better give all your rights up. I mean, he said it. He said, you just get ready for it. We're going to lock all the cities down. They had the head of FEMA, Mike Van Winkle, up in New Jersey, say in the newspaper, in the Gannett News Service, that, hey, under a red alert, you can't leave your house. You'll be considered an enemy combatant if you leave your home. The Army, they had one of their colonels in the Detroit Free Press. He said, we'll shoot grandmothers if they try to run quarantine. And you look at what Bush is doing. He's building 36 giant, what he calls BioShield Level 4 bioweapons plants. Baltimore Sun said they're going to produce thousands of gallons of liquid death of weaponized smallpox, weaponized Ebola. And they're just doing right in front. The terrorists are about to strike us. The terrorists are about to strike us. And they're building all these giant plants to just, and in big cities and small towns. 36 of them. I mean, they're 100 times more dangerous than a nuclear weapons production plant or nuclear reactor. And have you heard about this on the news? Very little. So your television watching you. And then I've got the new Victory Act. What this is a duplication of Patriot Act 1 and 2. Because parts of Patriot Act 1 have been repealed in the House. It's now in the Senate. And so they're trying to duplicate it. Again, they shoot a torpedo at the country. We might, it might hit the ship in a spot where the bulkhead's reinforced and only floods a few compartments. Well, they're not going to stop. Torpedo 2, Torpedo 3, Torpedo 4, Torpedo 5. That's what they're doing right now. I'm writing analysis of the Victory Act. It says in here, the Victory Act says that possession of any controlled substance or prohibited substance. That means a little old lady puts her medication in the wrong plastic container when she goes to church. And who doesn't do that? Who takes medication? You've all heard of little old ladies getting taken to jail. Cop pulls over. Let me search. Well, sure, I'll turn to the knife. What are these pills? These aren't the designated bottle. Under that, it says one marijuana cigarette, anything, 20 to life. It says it. It says it in the Victory Act, word for word. And it says it's an act of terrorism. And before they announced this evil law, before Ashcroft went on his ridiculous Carnival Barker road show, before they did that, they had all the TV ads. Well, I occasionally smoke marijuana, and I don't see how it helps terrorists. And then the guy goes, the intellectual goes, let me list 100 reasons. And at the end, the guy's going, and then the ad fades to black, like, oh, I've been decimated. See, they tell you, marijuana is aiding Al-Qaeda. And then you see all these ads on TV, public service announcement, brought to you by Homeland Security, or brought to you by all their little minion groups, all the little 501c3 charities. And so they do that. That's what they're up to. This is their operation. So they're just firing, and people go, well, we've been beating back the first Patriot Act and educating a lot of folks, but they're bringing out more, nothing we can do. You're in a war, folks. They're firing more torpedoes. That should encourage you. These guys... arming enemies, arming terrorists. There are as many examples of this as there are fish in a good-sized lake. I mean, it's amazing. Here's one, Time Magazine, and they just admit this now. Nukes to North Korea from Nashville. And it says, yeah, these conservative groups that own these big weapons companies, they've been selling all the nuke stuff to Kim Jong-il in North Korea. Now we're going to have to have World War III to fix it. Well, that's all right. But we had to go in there and get Saddam, man. He had some aluminum tubing. My gosh, that guy, he was in bombed out bunkers. He was a real threat. Of course, he also had about $4 trillion in oil, and a bunch of weapons sales, and got the troops in that region, invade Syria, Iran, everybody else. So there's that. And there's idealistic Philippine rebellion leaders claim moral victory. This was all over the BBC and the French news. And 300 commandos led by a colonel took over a building, released documents, and said the government, with the U.S., has been doing all the bombings, shooting all the people. It's our own government shooting us. There are no terrorists here. The Muslims are doing nothing. These so-called terror groups are the Philippine government, quote, that wants to continue martial law. It's been in effect there for decades. I mean, it's simple. Let's say I owned the company that sold fire department equipment, and I wanted to make some money. I'd go out and set fire to something out here in Bastrop, and then I told you should have bought my firefighting equipment. I mean, it's not hard to figure this out. Here's another one. U.S.-Pakistan made deal over capture of bin Laden. That's out of the mainstream India. And Musharraf's over there, the head of India, the head of Pakistan, next door to India. We're all threatening to nuke each other. And they're saying, well, yeah, we could have got bin Laden, but we just didn't. That would have caused some problems. And they flew 8,000, it's not 6,000 now, 8,000 Taliban and Al-Qaeda out to safety in the middle of the phony war. All opposition fell apart. They flew them out to safety, admit the U.S. government did it, and Fox News said, well, it's true, but it was an accident. You're going to talk bad about our C-130 pilots? They didn't mean it. And there's the Pentagon there, admittedly, with large groups of euros and dollars and gold. Some news articles paying them. Good job, men, good job. They go in, act cool, shoot some stuff up. They were put in by the globalists. Then they have this big phony war. They collapse and fall back, and the globalists take over that country in a month that the Russians couldn't do in 8-9 years. It's all staged, folks. And they've got more wars. They say a 100-year war. They say that it's never going to end. And the war is now against people that smoke marijuana. Not against Ritalin or Prozac users, though. The war is now against people that don't turn over their property to the government. There's this stuff in the Victory Act about protesting or standing up for your land when they're taking it, and you're a terrorist. I mean, all this legislation turns us into serfs, slaves. You tell somebody this, though, they go, that's ridiculous. Government would never do anything wrong or want to control us. Oh no, just all throughout human history, 6,000+ years of civilization, that's all they ever tried to do. But now, they're all nice and sweet. By the way, guys in black ski masks were always bad guys. People in black ski masks, oh, that's the terrorist, that's the bank robber. About 5 years ago, Hollywood, the news, hey, all cops look like this, it's cool, they're the good guys. Every department, well, I got to have my own combat boots and my own ski mask, my own black helmet, and somebody's door to kick down. Man, that's cool. But the good news is that John Ashcroft has been trying to go around the country and have these staged town hall meetings where they only allow police and government employees in. And in Detroit, he got up this week and began giving a speech, and at the end of it, a man stood up and said, Mr. Ashcroft, I would like to know which of your terrorists are going to be used for a new 911. You and Vice President Dick Cheney, said the heckler who got into the room in a downtown Detroit convention center by posing as a TV reporter. These people shouldn't be able to go anywhere in public where they're out peddling their lies without being confronted by you, we the people. And I've covered these protests. I've had guests on in the middle of them in Detroit, in Salt Lake City, in Boise. And you'll have 500 people, 1,000 people, 200 people, black people, white people, Hispanics, old, young, conservatives, liberals, and they're all there, they're waking up. And if you just tell the truth about tyranny and explain how things really work and how corrupt and dangerous this out of control, privatized government is, how they created big government, got us all addicted, privatized it, and are handing it over to the corporations with new governmental power, and the little socialists I know are going out and buying guns. It's beautiful. If you're not a hypocrite, you can deprogram and go, wait a minute, did a Native American have a right to have a gun to defend themselves against the army? Well, of course. Well, you like Che Guevara so much. I don't agree with him. He was an establishment guy, but, I see you wearing a t-shirt with him with an AK-47. Why is that okay? See, you've just got an opinion that isn't backed up with any fact. And it's a recipe for disaster to disarm a population. You disarm a population. Let's say we had a little angel running the government right now. When you do get a dictator, they're going to be able to go all the way. And that's what the separation of powers are about. That's what the Bill of Rights is about. It's all about restraining power. Realize that history does repeat itself. And emperors and kings and despots and strong men and king rats have always used crises, the threat of the unknown, of the enemy, of the criminal, the low-level criminal, to convince the mass to relinquish control of their lives and to serve and become willing slaves of the system. This system is un-American. It's anti-human. It's anti-God. It's degenerate to its very, very core. And you are part of history in your fight against it. You are special. You do matter. You are leaders. So get in the bleeding heart liberal idiots' faces, the mindless neocons. Get in these people's faces and wake them up that we are under massive, sustained terrorist attack by the New World Order military industrial complex, and that they're attempting to expand that control. Again, thank you so much for coming, and God bless you all. Thanks for watching this presentation of the Matrix of Evil. All these different diverse minds coming to you with the same conclusion. World government, tyranny. It's up to you to become a leader. If you want to reach people, you first have to be informed. And one of the key areas of the New World Order agenda is government-sponsored terror, where the government carries out terror attacks and then blames it on their political enemies. And this is going on from Germany to Japan to the United States to Israel. And in my book, 9/11, Descent into Tyranny, I detail the history of government-sponsored terror. We focus on Oklahoma City and September 11th and show how they're using that as an excuse to expand their police state. I've also published another book by Paul Watson, Order Out of Chaos, Elite-Sponsored Terror and the New World Order. This book, in over 300 pages, lays out the facts of government-sponsored terror. It proves that the New World Order carried out September 11th and most other major terrorist attacks, and then again, use those events to scare the population into accepting tyranny. One of the best videos I've produced, of the 10 I've made over the last 6 years, is Police State 3 Total Enslavement. You want to wake people up? This is one of the key tools that we offer. It covers what the New World Order is, the history of it, the PNAC prior knowledge of September 11th, the attack on liberties through Patriot Act 1 and 2, Homeland Security, Ashcroft's lies, government-run white slavery rings that are admitted in the mainstream media as one of their largest industries after drug trafficking. We get into gun control, forced inoculations, foreign troops, concentration camps, the cashless society control grid. Police State 3 Total Enslavement, folks, is an incredible film if you want to truly be informed about our world today and be educated so you can inform others and be a leader in your community. And then, of course, I produced 9/11, The Road to Tyranny, covering September 11th and government-sponsored terror, along the same lines of the book, 9/11, Descent into Tyranny. Part 2 of my 9/11 film and book is The Masters of Terror Exposed. And this film just continues with hundreds of smoking guns and red flags proving that the military-industrial complex carried out September 11th. So again, please visit Infowars.com or PrisonPlanet.com and our secure online shopping cart and buy these books and videos and share them with your friends and family. Or you can simply call toll-free 1-888-253-3139 or write to us at the address that we're going to put on the screen. Number one, these videos and books are powerful tools to wake people up. 90% of those that see these documentaries are beginning to awaken. Because the New World Order agenda is so far along now, they're very perceptive to the truth. They already instinctively know that something's wrong. And secondarily, purchasing these films and books also supports our ministry and what we're doing to unlock minds, to free minds out there, to shatter the controlled paradigms and attempt to resist this dehumanizing force that is neo-serfdom. Again, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your support. God bless you.
Disconnect from the oil, gas, and electric companies. Never pay an energy bill again. Too good to be true? While the offer lasts, volunteer your home as a power generating site to use a compact-free energy generator at no cost to you. Heating, cooling, and electricity for your home could be absolutely free. Our company will make money selling excess power to utilities as ordered by Congress. Send $9.95 for a video with details on this limited offer. Call the number on the screen. Make your own declaration of energy independence.
Modern technology. The car, airplane, telephone, television, the computer, and fax.
Technology's first thought, too good to be true.
Were in fact too good to be ignored.
Technology exists to replace fossil fuels. A new motor can power your present car without gas or electric. Burn garbage at home with no smoke. Disconnect from the electric company and never pay an electric bill again. Too good to be true?
Or too good to be ignored.
For years, big money influence has hidden the truth about energy alternatives. Discover the truth for yourself. Give us a call and we'll lend you free our information kit. It's 6 hours of video demonstrations and explanations that'll astound you, including reports from scientists to support this new technology. It's simple. We loan you the kit for a free look. There's no rental fee and nothing to buy. After 2 weeks, return it so others can do the same. Upon delivery, give us a credit card number or post-dated check that we can hold. Once the kit's returned, you'll get your check back uncashed. Call the number on your screen. There's nothing to lose. We'll even pay for the call. Think this offer's too good to be true?
No, it's too good to be ignored.
Promises to become a lot easier for us when alternate sources of energy successfully replace our current pollution-causing fossil fuels.
Steve Rambo's Daily Planet will periodically report on possible alternatives. Tonight, he reports on Brown's gas.
Well, put your thinking caps on, because for most of us, the technical reasons why Brown's gas works are mighty complicated to understand. So we're going to break it down a little bit. Brown's gas begins with water, ends with water. Pretty simple. When it produces a flame, it does so not through explosions like fossil fuel, but through implosions. And here's a definition for a word you'll tossed around. When something is sublimated, in this case, it means it's being directly changed from a solid to a gas. So here goes.
What the professor has done is taking ordinary tap water, separated it into two atomic components, hydrogen and oxygen, and now we have a clean burning fuel that's renewable and reusable, and when you burn it, it goes right back to water. This is a piece of pure tungsten steel, 100% pure tungsten steel, and it takes 6,000 degrees centigrade, close to 5960 to sublimate, which would take approximately 10 times more than what it takes to weld aluminum. Without any adjustment of this flame, I'm holding my finger there, we can sublimate tungsten steel instantly, go right back to gas.
Brown's fuel is also different because the temperature of its flame varies depending on what it's burning. The scientists say the flame temperature is due to an interactive combustion property.
The heat is produced by the material. The tougher the material, the hotter the flame gets or the reaction is.
So what does all this mean? What exactly could Brown's fuel actually do for us?
In the future, with this technology, we will be able to run cars and power plants with clean burning water as a fuel source. And since the earth is covered with 2/3 water, we will no longer have an energy crisis in this country or in the world, and we'll clean up the environment in the process.
Well, it was working.
Incredible. And finally, an energy source of a different kind.
Today begins one of the biggest weeks for our planet, Earth Week. Each day will be devoted to a different problem affecting our environment. Today is Energy Day, and Earthwatch reporter David Garcia joins us now with a look at what some people are doing for this big week. David.
Okay, Colleen, from love beads and protest demonstrations 20 years ago to pinstripe corporate mainstream. The environment is today's headline, but is it all talk? We're reaching an energy overload with demand and a short circuit on supply. An unlimited energy source, efficient, pollution-free, and it comes from water, even seawater. Impossible, you say. But what you're seeing is a water flame.
We take ordinary tap water, separate it through DC electrolysis into an atomic mixture of hydrogen and oxygen through one hose. And it's a clean, burning, reusable fuel source. It takes nothing from the air, it gives nothing back to the air, and when you burn, you have water as the exhaust, so to speak.
Developed in Australia, turning water into energy is a radical concept for fueling industry, homes, even automobiles. But advocates say it'll take radical ideas to solve the energy crisis.
If everybody used one of these tomorrow for other purposes, we wouldn't have to worry about the ozone layer, we wouldn't have to worry about the emissions from cars or plants. The Earth would heal itself.